Hey, Chuckaroony. It's your brother Davis, as always. Also, Leanne. Oh, where's my finger? There. She's all the way back there. She just wanted to. Oh, I think somebody's laptop is on. How you doing, man? It's Friday. I thought it was. I'm just gonna take these off. The reflection is getting to me. I thought it was 2 in the afternoon. It's actually 4 in the afternoon because my laptop was still on Hawaii time. Because I think I'm still on Hawaii time. We just got back last night from the trip where we hung out with you in Charlotte, and it was fantastic. And yeah, that was. I could just do a fresh Friday about being a twin of someone who lives in Hawaii and how great that is. But you already know that. I mean, you are that twin, so it's not really a worthy suggestion. Forgive me for my low energy level. I also just had some kava, which helps cool down the steamer here. But I've got really something I think you're gonna dig today. I actually already told you about it, but I figured I'd do it in a way that's a little bit more researched and a little bit more live. Um, I want to recommend Rob Bell. I can't remember how I found out about him. I mean, he's been like dancing around my world for a long time. I feel like he's been brought up to us several times throughout life. But I heard him recently because I was looking up podcasts on the minimalists, interviews with the minimalists. And he did an interview with them a while ago, and I was just listening to him, and he just seems like a happy guy, and I thought he was kind of an interesting person, and so I checked out his actual podcast, which is called the Robcast, and I listened to his most recent episode, and he talked about this movie that was coming out about him called The Heretic, and so I watched the trailer with Leanne, and and it gripped me, man. Something about this guy really grips me. He he was a pastor of a mega church in Michigan, Western Michigan, and had a crazy journey. I mean, he started off in the lineage of I'm gonna get these names wrong, so I might not even say it, but he sort of a long line of evangelical Christian churches, some of whom were very politically active and conservative, and then his mentor broke off and started his own little church in Michigan that was a little gentler, a little bit more inclusive, what they might call liberal theology, perhaps. And then they still wore suits and ties and stuff. It's a little conservative. So then he broke off himself and started a church of his own called Mars. Shoot, I'm just gonna avoid names because I know I'm gonna mess it up. Something with Mars in it. Mars Village Bible Church or something. I'll probably do a little pop-up thing that writes it right here. Anyway, he started this little church. It was just a small thing, and then it blew up over time. He wrote a book that we've discussed called Love Wins. I remember growing up, there was like stickers everywhere. Everyone had Love Wins stickers. And his congregation at its largest was like 10,000 people, which is a lot of people listening to this guy talk. But then he started to like look deeper into the stories that he was reading in the Bible, and some of them were contradictory to the way that he was seeing how things were done in churches. So he started his own sort of journey into understanding what it was about. For example, he didn't see churches as an inherently good thing. The 1 hour on Sunday mornings as like when to do it, or like the idea of a church in general, its own sustainability is founded, and it's necessary for its success that people are engaged in it. So you kind of have to eventually get to a more benign place where you don't push too many buttons. But he wasn't interested in not pushing buttons. He started pushing buttons pretty early. In 2003, he did a sermon, for example, on gender equality. And even though in the Bible there are verses that sort of contradict this idea, he brought women onto the board of directors at his church, which inspired 2,000 people to leave. A couple years later, he openly opposed the war in Iraq in his church, which led other people to leave. He started to like lose his sense of what he was doing because he was starting this church. It was sort of this huge thing, and he started, you know, feeling like the church itself was rejecting him, and yet he was reading the the stories in this book, and he was feeling like there were ways in which he could change the world with how he was looking at it. So he's really conflicted. There's a story in this New Yorker profile about him where he was in between the 9 and the 11 o'clock services, and he was hiding in a little closet. He just didn't want to come out. He could just dream of running away. He eventually wrote a book called Love Wins, which questions the existence of hell, which I think is really interesting because that's a foundation of conservative evangelism and fundamentalism. And a year later, he ends up leaving the church to move to California, where he had gone to seminary. And he started to become this sort of, the reason that the movie is called The Heretic is because he started to be criticized regularly by fundamentalist Christians. People wrote books people started criticizing it online and, in interviews, and then they started all writing books in response to this, almost like, whoa, this guy is going down the wrong path. But what's interesting about his message is that it's so much more inclusive, so much more gentle. I mean, he started thinking about, he was like, I'm just going to, preach about the things that I actually seen in my life, like generosity and forgiveness. And these like really sweet things that, when I had the honor of playing Jesus in Godspell, I felt in my character and the experience of playing that character. It's all the good stuff. We read the I Ching, you read Hawaiian script, spiritual texts, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, Illusions by Richard Bach. I don't know. And there's truth everywhere. There's truth everywhere, and there's good stuff in there. There's a reason that this has persisted as long as it has. What I find so intriguing about Rob Bell is that he's trying to spread the message of goodness in the world, and not and really in a resistance to the institutional religious element of it. He sort of sees religion as a dangerous thing. He's a benign spiritual seeker and teacher, and he's really good at teaching. He's super compelling. I'm listening to his latest book, What is the Bible? Which I should mention, I was really resistant to these ideas, all of this. And then I just was like, oh, I'm gonna give this guy a shot. And it's really, it's given me a really interesting look at a book that I thought was something that I'm not interested in. And I'm really interested in learning all of the things, and I want to be more inclusive. And I feel like this guy's a really interesting path into that inclusivity, the nature of all things. I think the most interesting way to get into him is this profile I did on this TV show, The New Yorker Presents. I watched it on thenewyorker.com, but I'm a subscriber. I don't know if you are able to, but you can definitely watch it on Amazon. And if you need, just let me know and I'll hook you up with the video. But it's really cool because I think you and Charlotte would appreciate it, because he's a surfer and he surfs regularly, and he moved out here to, basically he gives talks in everywhere but churches if he can help it. Rock venues. He's got a regular show at the Largo, which I think you would find interesting. The reason he came out here was a TV show deal that he was trying to do with Carlton Cuse, who was one of the producers of Lost. And he's good friends with Pete Holmes, who kind of drives me nuts sometimes, but he's also, he's funny. I just saw him recently. But I think you would love this little profile because he talks about the ocean, and he just really hits these points that are just, really tap into sort of this thing that I've been pushing against for a long time, that I feel like I'm open to, and I think you would just really resonate with this guy, and Charlotte too. Yeah. Wow, that sort of just kind of flowed out. The other thing I wanted to mention is that he's incredible at the art of the sermon, which is something we've seen a lot of. We've seen some okay ones growing up. I don't think we're exposed to sermons ever. So, but they're just stories. It's just in sort of theatrical interpretations of these stories, and he's just a master of it. I'm just really in awe of him, and he laughs at himself. He's got a great sense of humor. He's really smart, and I just think he's the kind of person who you would resonate with as a spiritual leader, seeker, and being. All right, man. Love you. Hope you have a good one. Peace.